So are you passionate about creating a massive impact in the world, but you're also getting tugged because you want to create a deeper connection with your family, with your spouse, and then you also want to figure out a way of getting some sleep, getting some rest, recovering, taking care of your health, and trying to excel at it all? If so, today's interview is going to be for you because there is a way that you can have it all if you're willing to not only think of things differently, like we always talk about on Modern Leadership, but also develop the habits of what a successful person who's able to take and like really not, I hate the word work-life balance. And a lot of people talk about it, but it's really so powerful when you can figure out what that harmony is all about. So if you're somebody who really wants to excel and you just want to know what are the habits that will help me get there, welcome to Modern Leadership. Let's go. It's time to redefine leadership. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. Our channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs like you to achieve the next level of success in business and life. We believe that you can create a massive impact in the world without compromising your personal life or family time to do so.
We're committed to providing you with actionable tips and strategies weekly to make that possible. So if you're ready to become a modern leader and make a lasting difference in the world, consider subscribing. Turn on notifications and dive into our community. We want to thank you for being here because the world needs your leadership now more than ever. Let's go.
That's right. Let's go. So you may see that I have a great person who's here on with me, who is not my wife, but is a very powerful life and performance coach. As a matter of fact, she is a master coach on our team. Teresa couldn't make it today. She is taking Alyssa to a million different soccer games, feels like the valet. But that being said, when I think about time management, when I think about being able to excel at it all, when I think about like being in difficult situations, but always finding a way to make time for what's most important, I think of Elena. And there's no better person for me to bring here on the channel to talk about work-life balance, to talk about having it all, to talk about like continuing to grow because not everything's perfect. But I also like the way that she serves is on an entirely different level, and you get an opportunity to see that here today. So I want to welcome Elena. She's a powerful leader. She works with purpose-driven nurses and ambitious solopreneurs to cultivate their work-life balance. She does that through mini sessions, group programs, personalized one-on-one life coaching program. And we have her here, and I'm going to ask her some powerful questions. But Elena, welcome to the show.
Hi, I have goosebumps. That was the coolest intro.
Oh, I'm telling you, and I meant every single word of it. I meant every single word of it. And I'm sure that everybody, as they hear your heart right now, they're going to see that they can be a servant leader and excel when it comes to the connections that they have at home with their family. And there's nobody better to talk about that than you. So I just want you to do a little bit for me. I want you to give a little bit of introduction for the people here. So give us an idea about your journey. I know you're an entrepreneur. You're also a nurse. You're also a master coach. You're a mom. You're a wife. You've got all of these great like hats that you like to wear. But I kind of just want to hear, like, can you give us an idea of what your journey has been like?
Yes. So I kind of laugh when I hear entrepreneur and business because literally my only goal in life was to be a nurse. Since I was 13, I knew that is what I wanted to do. That is all I cared about. That was where all my time and energy went. I kind of stumbled / reluctantly / was pushed into business. At the time I was working night shift full time in the NICU, and I reached a point where I was personally burnt out. I no longer recognized the person in the mirror. I had lost my energy. I had lost my natural happiness. And my journey started with my own just personal health and wellness and trying to get me back. That introduced me to network marketing. And when I say I was reluctant and hesitant and skeptical, like I had all the thoughts, right? Like that, but that really opened my door just to the idea of business. But I was still like headstrong on nursing. I was on the path I wanted to be a nurse practitioner. Like my goal and everything was still in the nursing realm. It wasn't until I was 2 months pregnant that, this part of my story is hard to share. My husband had to, essentially tell me that my youngest brother had taken his own life. And, there was just this moment in time where you know, when you lose somebody like that in such a very unexpected way, it forces you to, question life. It forces you to
Mm,
question everything, really. But at the time, I was carrying a child. And so I had to pull myself together. I leaned into the only thing I knew how to at the time, and that was my health. Like, I was so fortunate that I had that avenue. Um, because I had to take care of me to be able to take care of him.
mm,
6 months later, I was then 8 months pregnant, and I received a phone call that my other younger brother was in the ED. And when you're the nurse, naturally, you're the first one to be called, right? So
mhm,
I was the first one to show up at the hospital, and I was met with a nurse that I knew. And when I was escorted back, I already knew that that wasn't a good sign. And then when I saw her face go completely pale, it was a moment, again, like another moment where it was just a standstill in time.
mm,
But a couple of days later, we were forced with the decision to remove him from life support. And then a month later, I delivered my child. And it wasn't until I was in the hospital delivering my first child that I was smacked with all of the emotions, right? The
mhm,
the grief that I had been holding in, the happiness of delivering my child. But more so it was this, I'm holding this life in my hands now, and life is so short. Life is so freaking short.
mm,
And I just honestly, and it was that moment that completely just changed the trajectory of my life. Like, being a nurse is still a huge part of who I am and what I love doing, but helping people live life, and I mean, like, actually live life, not just go through the motions, not just show up to work because they have to.
mm.
Um, that's been my heart, that's been my passion, and that is where this, you said, I laugh because I also really don't like the word work-life balance, but that is what everybody craves. But it's but they don't realize what it is that they actually need beyond that work-life balance.
Mm.
Um, and so that's, where I'm at now. That is.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that, friend. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Um, and I don't know, like I'm going back to that time when you made a decision, like this is what I'm going to do moving forward. Life is too short. Like, is that a natural outlook that you typically have, or did you have to reframe it, like to actually be able to step into that and go, you know what, this is what I'm going to be doing with my life. This is the impact that I want to make. This is what I want to be able to help other people. Was that like a natural progression, or is that something you had to work on?
A mixture. So I
Yeah.
would say naturally I am a person who's like, you know what, I'm just gonna, according to my mom, pick up my bootstraps and figure it out, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna show up. But it was also a navigation of, at the time, like, I was still working full time as a nurse. I was still taking care of a newborn. I was navigating, like, yeah, I had this business, but I didn't know how to build a business, or truly at that time, I really didn't know the impact that I wanted to make or the message that I wanted to share. I was just like, this is what I don't know what it is, but this is the way I need to go. Like, something's
Hmm.
pulling me in this direction. Um and, at that time I had invested, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to actually invest in this business, not just do the free courses and the free trainings. And so that, opened doors in the sense that I invested in my business, but then that opened doors to investing in myself, which opened
Mm.
life coaching.
Right.
And when I caught wind of life coaching, I'll admit, at first I was like, no, 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 I'm building this business. I don't know what this life coaching thing is.
Hmm.
But then as I was, going through it myself, I'm like, oh wait, no, that, like, and so the doors opened for me, but I think the mindset was naturally there, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So it
It
was
does.
like natural in the sense that, like, I'm gonna figure this out, but it was a progression as far as, like, I didn't know what I wanted or where I was going, but I just followed that intuition of like, this is the direction I need to go. I don't know why. I don't know what's going
Mm.
to come from it. So yeah.
I think that's, first off, I think that's awesome. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate you for two things here. Number one is just the powerful leader that you are. Ed Milet, I'm not sure if you read the Power of One, where he talks about like every family has someone they call the one. It's the person that changes the trajectory of everyone else in their family because they're willing to step up, they're willing to lead, and they're willing to go through the difficult conversations and come out stronger on the other end. And like, I literally know that I'm talking to the one of your family because you're the one who has gone out there. You've taken those actions. You've like gotten knocked down several times, but you're not willing to give up. You're actually willing to like turn this into your superpower. And I have to say, like, super powerful for you to do that. And just, I'm so blessed to actually have you as a friend in my life. So thank you for being a powerful role model for everyone. The second thing I want to acknowledge and appreciate you is about being a NICU nurse. So not a lot of people know this, but Andrew, my son, he spent 73 days in the NICU. So he was born 1 pound, 9 ounces. He was like, he could fit in my hand and he couldn't breathe on his own. And I don't know what I would have done without those NICU nurses. Like there was 4 of them. I remember seeing them breathing for him, doing all of their stuff. And they were just totally cool, calm, and collected. And they literally got him to be where he's in the other room right now. you know? And we got to go out on a walk just before this with my puppy. And it was like, I can't say just how much I appreciate you for the work that you do. And I see the kind of stress that NICU nurses specifically go through. I know nurses go through a lot of stress, but having a little baby that you're in charge of and multiple little babies, let me just say, like, I just want to acknowledge and appreciate you for that. So, and all of this to say, we haven't really even hit in the whole time management piece, right? But all of these things are kind of like just things that I want to call out to because it just shows the type of leader you are. So I appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
Now I do want to ask you a couple different questions related to like time management and how you were able to like be able to juggle all of these things and figure out a way where you said that's like this happy, like amazing harmony between all of it, right? So I kind of want you to see if like, can you give me an idea of like what maybe some of your strategies are, and maybe even some times when things haven't been going so well when it comes to your time management and some things that you've been able to accomplish and learn through that ability of going through the suck, if they say.
Yeah. So before I dive into my strategies, I think
Mm-hmm.
the biggest thing to stress here is that this is going to look different person to
Mm-hmm.
person. Really, when we even talk about the word balance in general,
Mm-hmm.
it at the core is figuring out what your balance is, right? Because my balance is going to look different. It looks different than my husband's balance. It looks different than my coworkers. It looks different than my friends. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to stress that here. And it's not a one size fits all either. So I'm going to share my strategies, but as I'm sharing, I want you to like take away pieces that you feel would help you and work for you, but not necessarily be like, oh, if this is how she does it, this is how I have to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, spoken like a true master coach.
All right. So, in my opinion, there are 2 principles of time management. This is something that I teach on in my groups. Typically, when we think about time management, we think about external factors. So, like the conscious, right? So, we think time management, and all of a sudden, our brain goes to calendars, planners, organization, structure, the to-do list, right? That's really those external factors. I have an overwhelm overhaul workbook, which is something that I created from personal experience because this is how my brain works. And this is going to sound really simple, but if anybody has worked with me, they know that simple is my avenue because the world is already crazy enough. We don't need to overcomplicate the process. But I have what's called a purposeful living worksheet where there's 4 steps to this. I literally brain dump. And when I say brain dump, I'm talking about everything, like getting everything out that's going on in your head onto a piece of paper. A lot of our stress and overwhelm comes from just the mental to-do lists that all those tabs we have opened in our brain literally are all open at the same time. And we're trying to process it and our brains just don't function that way.
Mhm.
So brain dumping it. And then the next piece to that is taking that and separating it into a want to do list and a needs to do list. So
Mhm.
when I say wants to do list, I'm talking about like that closet in your house that is exploding at the seams, that drives you absolutely bonkers every time you open the door, but you shut it and ignore it. But you know in the back of your mind, like, oh, I should really probably organize that, right? Or the pile of laundry that's residing in the corner, or maybe the clean laundry that's still sitting in the dryer. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's the wants to do side. The needs to do is like, those are the things, the non-negotiables that have to happen this week. Like no if, ands, or buts about it. Those happen this week. Then we take that needs to do list and we either triage it. I use triage because I'm a nurse by background, but prioritize is the
Mhm.
other word for that. So prioritizing that list and then putting it on the purposeful living worksheet, which is really a fancy way of saying time blocking.
Mhm.
And I feel like I need to say this to people because this is can be interpreted one of two ways of like, oh, that doesn't work. That type of structure and organization is too rigid for me. And this is not to be like, this is exactly how you have to do it 100% every single day. That is not the purpose of that worksheet. The purpose of that worksheet is just to give you some sort of a rough draft for the week, right?
Mhm.
Something that you no longer have to think about. You just get to look at and be like, okay, this is what I'm focusing on today.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't get done today, it is not that you are failing. It just gets moved to another day.
Mhm.
Um, the second piece to this, and this is a piece that not a lot of people think about. And this
Mm.
is the side, like I am a type A personality when it comes to organization and structure. And I know not everybody is that way. But this side of time management, nobody thinks about. And I get like super into it sometimes. So ask me questions or I can rein it in. But this is the subconscious level of time
Mm.
management. This is the
You're speaking
piece.
my language.
Mhm.
I like subconscious.
This is the internal
Mhm.
piece to time management. And honestly, when I think about it, it is the most beneficial because this is how we live feeling less rushed. This is how we live feeling less stressed.
Mm.
Okay. So this can be broken down into two things. It is our presence with time, not Christmas presents, not the gifts, our actual physical presence. Okay. So being physically and mentally present in whatever it is you are doing.
Mhm.
And then the second piece is our perception of time. And when I say perception, right? So we can think about the facts of time. There are 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, 365 days in a year. Those are facts. We know that to be true. But when I talk about perception, I'm talking about the rate at which your second passes. So, our rate at which the second passes depends on what it is we're doing and where we are. And I like to explain this as you can kind of think of it as two different ways. If you're sitting in a lecture for a topic that you absolutely hate, so I think back to college, right?
Mhm.
I'll talk English was not my favorite subject. Whatever that was for you, sitting in that lecture felt like a lifetime versus going to dinner or getting drinks at a happy hour with your best friend. That hour is going to fly by. You're actually going to wish that you had more of that.
Mhm.
That's what I'm talking about when we think about perception of time.
Mhm.
Another way you can think about this is, I kind of laugh now that I'm a mom, but I think back to college still was like, if I had 15 minutes before I had to walk out the door in college, I would sit down because I'd be like, oh, that's not enough time to do anything. I'm going to sit on this couch. Right. But now as a mom of two, if I have 15 minutes before I'm walking out the door, I can get a little laundry in. I can unload the dishwasher. I'm going to laugh at that one because my husband's probably shaking his head being like, no, she won't empty the dishwasher. Or I can get stuff out for dinner. Right. Like, our perception of 15 minutes changes depending on what we're doing,
Mm.
where we are, the season of life. But there is a way to tap into that perception of time that actually makes it slow down.
I love it. I love it. And I want to hear a strategy in a second, but I got to think with the dishwasher too. I just have to admit it. I have to call it out. Ask Teresa. I got to think with the dishwasher too. But this makes total sense. So the first bucket is kind of like what most people think of time management is like getting everything that you have in your brain out on a piece of paper. And it's kind of amazing how sometimes when you write things down, you're like, well, that made sense in my brain, but it doesn't make sense here, right here, right? I remember like having coaching sessions, even last week, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna have this hour for coaching session, then the next coaching session here and there. And you're like, well, where's my bathroom breaks? Like it makes sense when it's in your brain, but when you see it on paper, you're like, where am I gonna eat? Like, am I gonna, and it doesn't make sense until you have it all written out, right? And you're able to block that and like build on it. But I'm sure there's also a learning process, I know there is for me, where it looks on paper, it looks amazing. And you're like, well, that didn't work. Like, what's a way that I could do this a little differently next time, right? But
Yeah.
I'm curious about this whole idea of like the passing of time, because you're right. There are certain things like for me, it's sometimes coaching calls, business things, YouTube lives. Like it just feels like it's like this, right?
Yeah.
And then there's other things where it's like, why does this seem like it's taking forever? So like, what are some strategies that you have to kind of like help people navigate that? Or is it just the awareness piece where you're like, now that you're more aware of it, it gives you that power? What do you think?
Yeah. So awareness is the first piece of knowing. So when we think about time, we function primarily in what's called Newtonian time. I can talk sometimes. And that is like the factual time. But also as we become adults, it becomes choke worthy in a way. Like this can also be explained as head versus heart. If you think about it, as Newtonian time is scarcity mindset around time. It's that it's limited. And that, it is essentially how we run and structure our day versus Einstein time, which is, would describe that as like the heart voice, right? Einstein, he thinks like time is relative. It is, we make time, we are time. There is an abundance of time. And it starts with one, awareness, but also how we speak. The words that we choose revolving around time. So if you want to talk about strategies, we could dive deep into Einstein time, but like, I think for right now, just one, becoming aware of what are the things that you do when you lose track of time because you are so engulfed in what you're doing, right? And how can you replicate that more? And then the other piece is the words that we choose to speak about time. If we constantly use the word busy, if we constantly use the word there's not enough time in the day, how am I going to get it all done? Right? You're never going to have enough time in your day. You are always, if you're always looking at your clock, honestly, this happened this morning. So we had a family event this morning, and then we went out with all of our neighbors for brunch. And on the way to brunch, I kind of started to feel a little stressed because I knew that we had this call today. And I was like, okay, I can either sit at brunch staring at my clock, worried about the time, or knowing that I have no control over how fast the food is made or how the service is, or I can sit and be present at the table, not look at my clock, right? And just know that I have no control over those factors, but I can control what it is I'm doing in that present moment.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, because you're actually also modeling the behavior of everything that you're talking about here today, right? Because you're being physically and mentally present when you're out there with your family or with your neighbors, rather than thinking about all the things of where you could be in that moment, right? I think that was definitely something that I struggled with for a long time. And I remember hearing this podcast that talked about like how to actually be present in the moment. And the way he described it was, he said, you think about 4 of your 5 senses, right? What do I see right now? And you look around and you see, because I don't know, for me, like I get tunnel vision sometimes, and you don't even realize that, like when I go on a walk, for example, and I'm walking around with my puppy, I could be focused on him not listening, putting everything in his mouth and like, but then there's like beautiful flowers and trees and like just a beautiful scenery, right? So that's what can you see? What do you smell, right? some of us know that our kids smell a certain way. And when we smell that, especially when they're babies, we're like, oh, that just gives us that feeling, right? It's the same as like smelling like warm cookies or something that your mom used to bake, right? So there's this smell, right? Then there's the feel. What am I feeling? I remember even doing this like when I was on a run, because when you feel your feet hitting against the ground, it's like, wow, like some people don't have this opportunity to feel this. And like, I get to feel this, right? And so they just basically said like going through the senses, right? And being able to like think of all the senses, what you are experiencing right now helped me to like really get present, because you're right. It was like I was at work thinking about home, and I was at home thinking about work. And it was like I was at neither of them. So I sucked at both of them until I was able to kind of like see, okay, I can only control what I'm doing right now and be fully present here. So I love that you were able to do that. But was that also, and what you're talking about here today, were these all skills that you just would naturally do, or are these all things that you're like you were just picking up along the way?
I'm learning along the way. And I will say I am not like, I'm still learning. I still catch myself like, this day and age, we are just so distracted. Everything is busy. Everything is rushed. And so it's something that I am still working on is being present, not being connected to my phone 24/7. And like trying to make that shift of like, when I'm playing with my kids, I'm playing with my kids. When I'm working, I'm working. Right. It's really this, this is going to sound silly, but I am somebody, I love people. I love connecting with people. I'm the person that will strike up a conversation with you in the grocery store. But if you like, I like to ask this question. When's the last time you went into a grocery store without a phone in your hand? When's the last time, for some people, when's the last time you even went to the grocery store? Because now we can, order it and have it delivered to our door. But when is the last time you actually made eye contact and had a conversation with somebody in the grocery store, or had a conversation with the person that's checking you out at the end? Like, we've just lost touch in those simple things, but those are the simple things that not only slow us down, but also slow time down. Because when we slow down, time slows down, because we're no longer rushed and hurried and like thinking about the next 10 things we need to do, because we're focused on just getting our groceries.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I, as a part of the 75 hard, one of the things that I had to do is you had to talk to a stranger every single day.
Ooh, I like
And I got to
that.
say, Elena, that was one of those challenging things. I'm an introvert per se. I'm a, police officer for 20 years. I kind of don't like to have those conversations with random strangers. But like I started to do that. I would go to like the grocery store and talk to the person at the end, right? Because you're like, okay, for sure I'm going to be able to talk to the checkout, the person who's checking me out, or the bagger, right? And you're right. It like created so many great conversations. It slowed down time, but also I realized that I carried that around for the rest of the day. And that energy that I felt from that conversation was like 99% of the time was positive. And I'm like, I've been missing this. Like, this is something that maybe I was a little nervous around because my head voice was getting in the way and I was labeling myself as an introvert. But in reality, when I did it, I was like, I feel so much better and I can literally carry this around to so many other people, right? So I'm on point with that. I'm still working on that, by the way, myself. But you said something, I mean, you say a lot of powerful things, but one of these things that you were talking about was like, it's this idea of like work-life balance, right? Like, okay, so you have your kids there, they're young, they want to play with mommy, they want to like go have fun, you want to have fun with them, and there's business time. It's time to lean in, it's time to get coaching, it's time to coach your people and your clients. How do you manage that between like these two pieces? And also a follow-up question is like, how do you communicate that to your kids, right? Do you have a way to communicate when it's work time and how you explain it to them? I'm curious.
Yeah. So, okay, that's a good question. Let me kind of give you a rundown. So my kids are very rarely home. Every now and then, right? If somebody's sick or something falls on the day that they're home with me, but very rarely are they home with me on work days. So, and that's by choice. And so, because that's also how I function. Like it is hard for me to work knowing that I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, both boys, wild and rambunctious, who just like to be WWE every single day. I just can't give my all to my business and my clients, and then also give my children my all as well. So, And that aspect, that's where I start, because I like, if I'm going to work, I need to work. And if I'm going to be mom, I need to be mom.
Mhm.
However, when they do overlap, which is rare,
Mhm.
like my oldest is now starting to understand, like, mommy, are you working today? And so it's a learning curve, right? Of like, I let people know, like, we're probably going to be interrupted because my son is home,
Mhm.
but I am a mom too. And then
Yeah.
he also knows.
Mhm.
It's been teaching him in the sense that, okay, mommy's working, but I'm going to be over here entertaining myself. So again, it's not perfect. It's not
Mhm.
always ideal. But for me, separating the two is the most ideal in that aspect.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And do you have like a way that you communicate that to your kids? Like, how do they know what you're doing? Do they like understand what mommy is doing when they're saying work? And I'm just saying that because early on with my kids is I didn't do a good job of communicating with them, and they just thought like I just wanted to spend time without them. And I'm like, no, I love you. I want to spend as much time as I can, but also this is what I'm doing over here. So I'm curious, like if you, I know you're still 2 and 4. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like,
Yeah.
have you thought about that? Have you communicated? What do you think?
It's funny. I haven't, other than when I go work at the hospital,
Yeah.
like my 4-year-old knows when I have my scrubs on, I'm taking care of babies. So he understands
Mm.
that now, but I haven't relayed the work that I'm doing at home. Like I just say that mommy's working, but I haven't actually even tried. So that's a really good point. I haven't tried to communicate essentially with him what exactly it is that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
And
2-year-old,
yeah.
it's in one ear out. Like he's like, what work? What's work?
Exactly.
He's
Exactly.
a wild child.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, and maybe 2 and 4 might be a little bit too young for that, but definitely something that, as I was communicating with my kids and getting them to see, like at one point, I was just keeping it super simple. Like I'm helping other daddies so they can like have more fun with their kids, and then once I'm done, then we'll be able to go out and do this. Be able to like have all the fun that you want to have. But I want other kids to be able to have daddies who want to go out and play with them. And I remember my kids were like, "Oh wow, that's really cool that you get to do that." And when they got a little older, I actually took them in and started, showing them some of the messages that people would send me about like, oh my God, thank you for this coaching session. And thank you for this. It's kind of cool to bring them in because I don't want them to feel like it's separated, right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, you're a part of this too. Like you're an important part of this. My kids taught me so many of the lessons from all the failures that I had while they were growing up that I want to pass on to other daddies, right? And it's cool that they get an opportunity to see the impact we're making. But also see that we make mistakes and everybody does, right? But we can all learn from them. So, okay. Now I do want to talk about like this idea and concept of burnout. And the reason why is because sometimes with all of these things going on, like we have those times where just even more gets added to our plate, right? We have this thing happen, somebody gets injured or has to go to the hospital, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then we're just like getting to that point where usually we put ourselves on the back burner first, right? We're like, oh, let me I'm going to sleep less. I'm going to do this less. I'm going to eat less, and I'll be the one so I can be the martyr, like for our family, right? But
Mhm.
it gets to that point where if that happens over time, it turns into burnout. So can you give me an idea? Like I know you had brought this up earlier about this whole philosophy of burnout. Can you talk to us about like how you describe burnout and also maybe some of the things that you do to address it if it starts to come up for you or for your clients?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This is a big one too. So by definition, burnout is a psychological syndrome. So
Mm,
that occurs when someone experiences prolonged stress, physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. That's
mm,
by definition. But for me, if I were to explain what burnout is, and this is from my own personal experience, it feels like losing yourself,
mm,
right? A sense of who you are, your purpose in life. You lose your passion. I work with a lot of nurses and a lot of entrepreneurs. So
mhm,
in nursing, this looks a lot like questioning, do you even want to be a nurse anymore? Right?
mm,
Something that you once loved, that filled your cup with so much joy, that you had so much passion around, because if you're a nurse, you know what it requires to get through nursing school. Like you have a heart, you have the passion there. Um, but then that kind of slowly fades away,
mm,
and then you start to question, um, and then even with entrepreneurs. So I just from watching, right? I've seen so many extremely successful women, because that's primarily who I work with, hit really big goals, right? Get the recognition, but they reach that point, they've lost who they are and what's meaningful to them in the process. So then they hit these big goals and it's not as big of an accomplishment as what they've made it out to be because they've lost who they are and what is meaningful and what they truly care about in the process. My personal experience with it was like, I just hit a place where I no longer recognize the person in the mirror. And I'm not just talking like physically, I'm talking, mentally. And it is, for me, it is such a vivid moment in my life because at that point in time, I was 25 years old, but I felt like I was 20 years older than I actually was. And that for me was like a wake up moment of like, I'm way too young to feel this old. I no longer had my natural happiness. Like I could turn it on, right? I could turn that happiness on for my patients' parents. I could turn it on for my coworkers. I could turn it on for my friends and family. But the second I was alone, it was wiped away. What I was portraying on the outside didn't match the inside anymore. And like, if I had to describe that to somebody, that is what burnout felt like. I just felt like a shell that was just like walking through the motions.
And it sounds like it's really connecting with a lot of people in the audience. Now, I kind of want to reframe or ask you a powerful question related to this, okay? So you, Elena, right now, 29-year-old Elena, you have
33.
a conversation. 29-year-old Elena has a conversation with 25-year-old Elena, all right? You're sitting in the room with her right now, and you want to give her some really solid advice. You're like, oh, coming from the place that I am right now, what advice would you give yourself?
Take care of yourself. And I know that sounds so cliche because everyone's like, yeah, well, if only I had time, I would take care of myself.
So what do you say to somebody who has that response right now? Well, if I did have time, then I would take care of myself. What would you say?
Well, I would dive into some life coaching to figure out where the limited time is coming from. So I don't know that I have an exact answer there because, truthfully, for every person, it's different. But oftentimes it's not that we don't have time. It's that we're scared. We've gotten so comfortable in the way we were living that, change and new is scary, even if it's our own health, anything. Just change and new is scary. And it's hard to hit that place of, like your back's against the wall. And if you don't make a change, something bad is going to happen as, medically wise. That's what I mean by that. Like, because you can only live that way for so long before your body does it for you.
Yep. 100%. I had a feeling you were going to give me that answer. Being a master life coach and a master life and performance coach, I mean, there are so many different ways. I know that you've experienced, but me too, when somebody says they don't have time. It can come from a million different places. And I think one of the things that a lot of people do is they start assuming where that place comes from. And they're like, well, this is where it came from for me, so this is how it must come from you. And that's what I mean. Like when I said that Elena is a powerful leader because she doesn't have assumptions about other people. She's willing to ask the questions and find out what is the root of this. Because it could be related to time, but sometimes it's related to fear. Sometimes it's related to lack of self-worth. Sometimes it could be related to anything, right? The amount of energy that you put into that is determined how worthy you are as a person, right? The amount of money that you make determines how much great of a father or husband you are. And we associate these things because of our life, right? Because of we grew up and we had experiences and maybe our parents kind of taught us that, but all of it is just, it could lead us down the path of feeling like we just don't have the time, but you have to be willing to explore that a little bit. So thank you for that. Now, I do want to talk about the whole idea of incorporating family time with everything you have going on. So you're a successful NICU nurse. You've got this successful business. I see you speaking on stage. You're crushing so many different things, right? So how do you also at the same time find that time with family that's not just like, hey, let's sit in front of the TV, but really being able to connect with them and create those kind of memories and what I like to think of as a legacy where they're going to remember you forever. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So for me personally, I work one day a week at the hospital. I work 2 days a week doing my life coaching. And then the rest of the days is family. So there's 2 days during the work week, Monday through Friday, that my boys are home with me. And those 2 days are, it varies depending on what we're doing, right? Because you still have to take care of the house. You still got to get the groceries, laundry, doing, all the things that comes with life. But really setting aside specific time to play with them. And I mean, play with them, right? Like whether we go on an adventure or we, go in our basement and watch a movie, or right now I have to laugh because my boys are obsessed with the second Frozen and they pretend to be the boulder monsters in the movie. And like me pretending to be a boulder monster with them is like the highlight of their day. So it's not, when I say this, it's not necessarily the amount of time that we spend with our family. It's that coming back to that physically and mentally being present with the time that we do have. The other piece to this is we go to family dinners at my in-laws' house every single week. That is with our extended family. And that is, that has become a tradition, something that we look forward to, our children look forward to every week. And then 3 days a week, for the most part, as long as our schedule allows it, we have family dinner at our dinner table. Like the four of us, we sit down and we have dinner. No TV, no cell phones, no toys, unless, our kids are really putting up a good fight. Sometimes they win that one. But even still, like we are sitting down around the dinner table. And while it's not a lot of time, I know for me, that's how I grew up. And those were memories that I have instilled in my head as a child of like, we sat down and we had dinner as a family. And so I know like my boys are still young now, but like one day they'll have that too. And weekends, let me tell you what, like being on here, while I love it and I wouldn't change it for the world, but like I don't typically do work on the weekends. It's not common, but because the weekends we do a lot as a family. You heard me say at the beginning, like we have an amazing group of neighbors that have literally become family, and we're always doing something. Our families are really big. We're always doing something. And that's all my kids know. And so from Friday until Monday morning, like we're out doing stuff. We aren't home a whole lot. And so and that's what's important to me. And truly at the end of the day, I would not be building a business if I couldn't have that, because it wouldn't be worth it to me.
I love that. I love that. I mean, once again, stepping up as a leader. Couple things that I want to acknowledge and appreciate you. First off, I want to acknowledge and appreciate your husband and your family for giving up some time to allow you to be here to speak this belief into so many people who really need it in their life right now. And we will get her back really soon. I promise. But two things kind of come up, and I love the idea. I know a couple of people in here said, I love family dinners, and family dinners is really powerful. For me personally, one of the things that I've found to like really spice up family dinners is like bringing a question or two to the family dinner to actually just let people explore a little bit. One of the things you were talking about is like, is sometimes the things that we're like, this probably doesn't make a big impact to them. They're like, that is what I love the most when mom and dad does with me. So I remember we did this little bit of a mini workshop. Yes, we do workshops at my dinner table. My kids, they'll tell you all about it. But I'm like, okay, let's do this, guys. Like, let's go around the table one at a time. And I want us to think about like, when you feel most loved by the people here at this table, what are they doing or saying that makes you feel that way? And we would go through. And so it was Teresa's turn. So Andrew would be like, Mom, I really love it when you do this. It shows me that you love. And my daughter was like, I really love it when you do this. And then I would say, I really love it when you do this. Right. And so we collected this. And when I got to like my son, he was like, I really like it when you're just tickling me on the floor and you're laughing and I'm laughing. And I remember that because I was like, that's crazy. I literally convinced myself this is not like, I just got home from work. I'm so tired. I got all this other stuff. And he's saying right now that is the most important and meaningful thing. Not when I took him to Disneyland, not when I got him an Xbox, not when I did all those. He's like, when you're just tickling, and literally by asking that question, I was like, I need to reframe and revisit a few different places here, right?
Mhm.
because it's not all about the time. It's like more about what we do, right?
Yeah.
And I love those questions. I actually just printed out a whole bunch of other questions that are here. If you could be on a TV show, who would you be, and why would you want to like be that person, right?
Ooh.
There's so many different great questions that you can actually just ask conversation, and you can have really great conversations. But one of the things that I kind of like wrote down here, I want to see if you deal with this as well for yourself, but I'm sure with your clients. But I also have a lot of women that I work with. And one of the things that I feel like is entirely different between men and women is there's this thing called mom guilt. And I
Mhm.
see it a lot. And it feels like just another layer that women who are moms have to go through. And I'm like, it's hard enough. Like, let's see what we can do to eliminate this. Number one, because I don't want that to happen to my client, but I'm going to be honest. Number two, I don't want that to happen to my daughter. I'm like, I want to make sure that I can do whatever I can to like attack this now. So
Yeah.
when it comes to that, is that something that you've personally dealt with and or with your clients? And what are maybe some strategies that you can pass on to me so that I can help not only Teresa, but also Alyssa navigate that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I had to navigate that one a couple of times. And I'm sure, just with anything, with every new season, there's just a new layer of guilt, right?
Hmm.
Um, so for me, like I would say the first scenario would have been when my second son was born. My husband and I made the decision for me to not go back to the bedside for a year. And I just had this. Actually, you know what? If you even go back to my first child, having to go back to work full time, I had
Yeah.
this guilt of, I loved being a nurse. And at that time, I really never thought about doing anything else. I never thought about being a stay-at-home mom. It was never a goal of mine. I grew up with two extremely hardworking parents. So like I wasn't exposed to that, right? So it was never a thought.
Hmm.
So I had this guilt of sending my, newborn to daycare while also,
Hmm.
leaving and loving my job. And it was like this pool of like, I love my job, but I feel like a terrible mom that my child's going to daycare. Um, and then it shifted, when I had my second, and now I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I had this guilt of like, am I throwing my career away? Am I
Hmm.
throwing my passion away? Like what am I doing? And this sounds so like here, this is that guilt factor of like,
Hmm.
now I'm just a mom, right?
Hmm.
And I had that guilt of like a loss of identity again. I had to go through like all I knew was being a nurse, and now I'm just a mom, and like, what do I do now? And so I had to work through that navigation of guilt. And all of this to say that moms carry a huge sense of guilt no matter what it is you're doing, whether you're working
Hmm.
full time, you're working part time, you're a stay at home mom. We always have this guilt of, am I doing enough? Am I spending enough time in the right area? And it is that of like doing everything for everybody else. And I think that's also why I was so pulled to work life balance, because you shouldn't feel guilty. You should never feel guilty for having a passion in what you're doing. You are
Hmm.
allowed to have a career if that is your passion. And you can still be a flipping good mother while building your career. You can build a business if you want to build a business, and build a successful business while being an amazing mom at the same time. And you shouldn't feel guilty for that either.
Hmm.
Stay at home mom, because I did it for a year, then you carry this weight of like, well, I'm not contributing to the family, but you're financially not, but you are contributing to the household in so many other ways.
Hmm.
And if being a stay-at-home mom was like your desire in life, you shouldn't feel guilty for that either.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I don't know that I have any specific strategies other than getting crystal clear on like, what do you want out of your life? Like, what do you want your work to look like? And what do you want your family time to look like? And once you can get clear on that, that's when you find your harmony.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So give me some personal advice here. So if I'm trying to make sure that Teresa doesn't add on additional guilt to all of the other things that she's doing, and she's doing so many things with excellence, like maybe even this for yourself, like what is it that maybe your husband does to help support you in this avenue so that you don't feel that guilt? Or what advice would you give me to make sure that how I can show up for Teresa and especially for my daughter? Because I know that whenever I show up for my wife, to Teresa, like my daughter's watching and she's like, oh, so that's how a husband should treat his wife, right? So when she gets older, she knows that that's what it looks like. And that's what my son sees too. But I always know that I can be better at that. So what advice would you give me? How would it be best for me to show up?
Ooh. So I'll agree with you on that one. Like we always have room for improvement, right? Like I am not the guru here. But I think it just comes down to recognizing and this is a conversation, Mark, that we had is that like I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if it wasn't for my husband.
Right.
And I don't tell him that enough. I think it and I like it is in my heart and I know that and I recognize it in myself, but I don't express that to him enough. So I think just having those conversations and telling each other like, I know that the work that you're doing is for our family. And I know that I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, I guess is the better words, if it wasn't for you. And I think vice versa is, having your spouse, if, they're the ones doing the dinner and cleaning. And it's easy to overlook those things when that's what you're used to coming home to. But it's being done behind the scenes and you don't recognize it. So it is work. Does that make sense? Am I making sense there? Like,
100%.
you know what I mean? Like I'm home, doing the cleaning and the cooking and, on the days that I have the boys, taking care of the boys. And, I think we overlook that in relationships of like, because we know I don't want to say what our roles are, because that's not what it is. But like, when it comes to like taking care of different things in the house, like, we in our heads know what they are. And so we're just so used to them getting done, but we forget to actually express our gratitude for it.
Yeah. I mean, that is really powerful. It has a lot to do with like communication, right? Just communicating how you feel, being on the same page. And I do find that there's a lot of times where there are situations where like, it kind of feels like the one person is ranking one thing higher than the other, right? Like taking care of the kids or making money or whatever it is, right? And it's kind of like an unfair playing field, right? Financial like success, it's a number that you can see. But how do you know like what life would look like if you weren't at home with your kids? You weren't connecting with them. You weren't having those moments, right? You weren't doing all those emptying the dishwasher and keeping everything together, right? It's like in reality, that is what I see is like the hardest part of it. Back when I was a police officer, people thought that like going to work was a lot of the hardest stuff. And I'm like, no, sometimes having two kids at home and try to juggle all that stuff and not miss something and not forget their water in their lunchbox and not do this, that was like way more challenging for me. And actually sometimes going to work was like an escape. So I could take a break.
It's funny. I joke too. Like sometimes when I'm at the hospital, I'm like, well, this is actually a break.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Raising kids and marriage and, it comes with challenges and it does. And I think, when you think about, work-life balance and it's not necessarily getting the work done that's the most challenging. It's juggling everything else.
Okay, so let's land the plane on this one because that's a really great question, and that is like, what's some advice that you could give people around doing that, juggling it all, being able to excel when it comes to as an entrepreneur, also being able to excel as a parent? Like, what are some tips that maybe you have that you could give to the audience you want to make sure they capture here today?
The first thing would be, so coming back to just because this is the way my brain works is that, brain dumping everything that you have to do. But one thing I didn't speak to is what can be eliminated. We think we have to do everything all the time. And so we're carrying all of this all the time. But when you, like we talked about at the beginning, when you put it down on paper, it like that in itself just lifts a weight off your shoulders. But then you can look and be like, okay, well, where am I spending my time? And is that really the best use, or can that be eliminated from my plate?
Yep. I love that. You're right. And here's the truth is like, as entrepreneurs and as business owners, as parents, sometimes the best thing we can do for the people that we lead is also ask them, what are some things that they don't have to do? Because when we remove things from their plate, I can't tell you, like usually a boss doesn't remove things from your plate, but a leader does. A leader goes, you know what? You're really good at this. Let's take this other thing off your plate so you can tap into your strengths. And how much are you like, oh, I'll follow you anywhere versus giving you more and more stuff to do? That I've also always found that like the more things I take off my plate, the better the other things that I'm still doing get to be, right? And I get to show up on an entirely different level. So now I do want to talk about like also the ability of being mentored in this situation. Obviously, you have your own business. You help women who are like going through this process. How has mentoring affected you in your life when it comes to work-life balance? And also, like, what are some things that you do for your clients in terms of how do you mentor them through the situations?
Honestly, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have my own mentor and coach, because when I look back to when doors started opening and I went in this avenue, I didn't have that, and I was still trying to do it all, and I was trying to carry it all. And there was a quote that essentially just opened my eyes of like, if you love what you're doing but not how you're doing it, you have the power to change.
Oof, that's a great one.
And that sentence, I was like, all right, I've been trying to work this one way my entire life. Maybe it's time to change it. And so investing in your own mentorship and coaching is the single best thing that you can do, because whether it's growing in your career or building a business or growing as a mom, whatever it is that you're focused on and you want in life, it won't happen until you are willing to grow yourself.
Always love it. It's the be, do, have version of everything, right? You have to become something different, and then you get to do, and then you get to have, right? I love that. I love it. Love it. So we're getting to the end here, and I know you gave us so many amazing nuggets. If you could give us like one key takeaway that you want to make sure that the audience really captured from this conversation, what would that be?
That no two journeys are alike. And finding your way. And when I say your way, I mean your way as far as balance and how you want to live your life is the key to a successful life.
I love it. I love it. Way to end it. So, Elena, somebody gets to this point and they want to learn more about you. They want to potentially work with you. They want to figure out like how they can get started on this work-life balance thing. Where's the best place that they can go to connect with you?
My Instagram is like my primary place of connection. And it's my full name, at Alena K Beittel. So ALANA KAY, B as in boy, EITTEL. And then there's a link in my bio that you can click on, and that will give you everything that you need.
Thank you, Kurt. He put it up on the on the page for us. We'll also go back and we'll put this in the description for anybody who is watching this in the future. Elena, thank you so much for this time. Tell your husband thank you so much for this time, and your kids. Really appreciate it. I learned so much myself from this, and I know everybody else did too. Appreciate you for being here and for what you do out there every single day. Thank you for leading from the front.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'll see ya.
All right, everybody. I appreciate you making it to the end. Really powerful video here. This is one that I'm probably going to go back and listen to multiple times, whether you're on our audio podcast or you're watching this on YouTube. By the way, if you're not on YouTube, you're missing out a lot. It's just so much better when you can actually see people. Hit us up. Modern Leadership. Definitely consider subscribing if this is something that's in alignment with what you want to be able to achieve. And also go to Elena's Instagram. A lot of powerful stuff, a lot of free stuff that she actually likes to do to get people started with this. Dive in. Thank you guys once again for making it to the end here, for being the leaders that we need out there more than ever right now when times get very difficult. It's time to lean in and figure out different strategies. Thank you for all the secrets today, Elena. Have a great day, everybody. Have a great weekend. Spend some time with your family and keep crushing that business. All right? Bye, everybody.